You have no idea what you've just done. The message from Jason glowed in the darkness of my apartment, his words more threat than statement. I stared at my phone screen, my fingers still tingling from where it had tapped the send button on what would become the most consequential email of my life. Outside, Brooklyn slept under a blanket of city lights, unaware that my world had just shifted on its axis. Actually, I whispered to my empty living room. I know exactly what I've done. I just emailed my father documented proof that his birthday dinner guest, my ex-boyfriend Jason Mitchell, was trying to scam him out of thousands of dollars. The same Jason who'd already taken $50,000 from me before vanishing. The same Jason who my mother and sister had welcomed with open arms at my father's milestone birthday celebration. The same celebration I hadn't been invited to. My laptop cast a ghostly blue light across my face as I closed it with a decisive click. It was past midnight, but sleep was the furthest thing from my mind. My phone lit up again, 3 missed calls from Jason in rapid succession. Then another text. Call me now. We can fix this before it's too late. Fix this. As if the problem was my decision to speak the truth rather than his calculated deception. As if I was the one who needed fixing rather than the broken dynamics of a family that had always treated me as an afterthought. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, tempted to respond, to explain, to apologize, old habits dying hard. Instead, I set the phone down and watched as it vibrated again, and again, and again. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I'd been the one desperately seeking their attention, my mother's approval, my sister's inclusion, my father's intervention. Now they couldn't reach me fast enough. I walked to the window of my Brooklyn apartment, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. Below, a taxi crawled down the empty street, its yellow light a lonely beacon in the night. I thought about all the family dinners I'd sat through, swallowing my words. All the times Victoria had talked over me, Mom had dismissed me, Dad had looked away. I thought about Jason's smug face in those Instagram photos, his arm draped casually around my sister's shoulders like he hadn't spent our entire relationship convincing me I was lucky he even looked my way. Sarah had warned me before I hit send. This isn't just going to hurt them, it's going to change everything. She was right. Tomorrow would bring chaos, angry calls, accusations, possibly legal threats. But tonight, I'd finally done what I should have done months ago. I'd chosen truth over peace, action over acceptance, myself over the pretense of family harmony. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Sarah checking in. You sure about this? Never been more sure. I texted back. Already found some gems. I moved away from the window and caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, eyes bright with something that wasn't quite anger, wasn't quite triumph, but felt strangely like freedom. Something inside me had fundamentally changed. I was no longer the Emily who disappeared into the background of family photos, who accepted last-minute invitations with pathetic gratitude, who pretended not to notice when conversations changed as I entered rooms. I was someone new. Someone with receipts. Flashback earlier that day, 6 hours earlier, I'd been sitting in a small cafe in Brooklyn with Sarah Porter, my best friend since our freshman year at Boston University. Our weekly coffee catch-up had been a tradition for nearly a decade now, a sacred space where we could drop our professional masks and just be. The cafe was our usual spot, a hole-in-the-wall place with mismatched chairs and coffee strong enough to strip paint. I'd been in the middle of telling Sarah about a frustrating client when I'd mindlessly opened Instagram. That's when my world tilted. They invited Jason, I'd said, the words feeling strange in my mouth as I turned my phone to show Sarah. To Dad's birthday dinner. Jason, but not me. Sarah's eyes had widened as she took in the photos. That manipulative piece of. Wait, isn't that the restaurant your dad specifically asked you about last month? Yep. I'd let out a hollow laugh that sounded nothing like me. The one where I spent an hour researching their wine list for him. I zoomed in on the wine bottle in the background. A 2015 Brunello di Montalcino, the exact wine I'd helped Dad pick out 3 weeks ago when he called asking for recommendations for a special occasion. At the time, I'd been touched he'd reached out, had spent an entire evening researching options to find something that would impress his business associates but wouldn't be ostentatious. Dad appreciated subtle quality. It was one of the few traits we shared. Sweetie, Mom's text had read earlier that day, coming in suspiciously fast after I'd viewed her Instagram story. She never called me sweetie unless she was hiding something. Just a casual last-minute thing for your father's birthday. You know how these impromptu gatherings go. Impromptu. Right. I'd traced the curve of the wine bottle with my finger, feeling the sting of calculation behind what I'd been led to believe was spontaneous. My phone had buzzed again. Victoria posting more photos. There she was, perfect as always, arm wrapped around Jason's shoulders, her professionally whitened teeth gleaming in the restaurant's soft lighting. Her caption read, "Nothing like family celebrations with the people who matter most. Hash blessed hash family first. The people who matter most." The implication couldn't have been clearer if she tagged it hash notemily. "Have you called your dad?" Sarah had asked gently, her voice cutting through my spiraling thoughts. "What's the point? He'll just say Mom and Victoria handled the guest list. He always stays out of it." I'd taken a shaky breath. You know what the worst part is? This isn't even surprising. It's just confirmation of what I've always known, that I'm the outsider, the one they include when it's convenient, exclude when it's not. I remembered my childhood in that moment, how Victoria had always been the golden child, the one whose dance recitals and soccer games were family events, while my art shows were just too far to drive to, sweetie. How Mom would beam with pride at Victoria's conventional achievements while my more creative pursuits were dismissed as hobbies. How Dad would occasionally show interest in my sketches, only to retreat into his newspaper when Mom redirected the conversation. "Remember when I tried to tell them about the money Jason owed me?" I'd said, scrolling through more photos. Mom said I was being dramatic. Victoria said I probably misunderstood the arrangement. Mom beaming at Jason as he apparently told some hilarious story. Dad looking slightly uncomfortable, but raising his glass in a toast. Victoria documenting it all for her increasingly popular Instagram account where she portrayed our family as something out of a Nancy Meyers movie, all creamy interiors, witty banter, and unconditional support. Sarah had reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Emily, this is beyond messed up. You need to say something." My phone had buzzed again. A text from Dad. "Great wine recommendation, sweetheart. Really made the evening special." Something inside me had snapped. The careful wall I'd built around years of dismissal and gaslighting crumbled. I thought about the folder in my email, the one labeled Jason Legal, containing every manipulative message, every broken promise, every admission of debt, the one I'd kept telling myself I was just being cautious. "You know what?" I'd said, straightening up. "I think Dad's about to learn exactly how special his evening was." "What are you thinking?" Sarah had leaned forward, concern mixing with curiosity in her expression. "Jason's not at that dinner just to reminisce," I'd said, pieces clicking into place. "He's there to pitch Dad on investing in something. It's his pattern. Charm his way into money, then disappear when it's time to pay up." "How do you know?" I'd pulled up my email on my phone, finding the folder I hadn't opened in months. "Because he told me himself, right here. I'll pay you back as soon as I secure my next investment." That was 8 months ago. Want to bet that's exactly what he's after now? Flashback meeting Jason. I remembered how Jason had first entered my life, charismatic, seemingly successful, talking about his Silicon Valley connections and startup experience. We'd met at a gallery opening in Manhattan where I was showcasing some of my graphic design work. He'd approached me with that smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners, asked thoughtful questions about my creative process, made me feel like my work mattered in a way my family never had. His father had been a Wall Street banker who lost everything in the 2008 crash and committed suicide when Jason was in college. He'd told me that story on our third date, vulnerability that made me trust him, made me believe his promises that his temporary financial troubles were just that, temporary. "I've got these investors lined up," he'd say, showing me sleek presentations on his laptop. "Just waiting for the final signatures. But you know how these things go. It's all hurry up and wait." The first loan had been small, just $5,000 to cover rent while he was between funding rounds. Then another $10,000 for server costs for his new venture. By the time I realized what was happening, I'd transferred $50,000 of my savings to him. Money I'd been putting aside for years, dreaming of opening my own design studio someday. What I didn't realize then was that the tragic backstory, the vulnerability, the promises of imminent success, they were all carefully crafted tools, ones he'd perfected to extract money from sympathetic women. And I'd fallen for it completely. "Oh my God," Sarah had whispered, reading over my shoulder in the caf. "You kept everything? Every email, every text, every bank transfer?" I'd smiled, but there was no warmth in it. They thought I'd sit quietly with the hurt, like always. I'd looked up at Sarah, but they forgot something important. "What's that?" "I'm not that person anymore. And I have receipts." Sarah had watched me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Do it. But Emily, be ready. This isn't just going to hurt them. It's going to change everything." I'd thought about all the times I'd stayed silent, all the family gatherings where I dimmed my light to avoid outshining Victoria, all the gentle suggestions from Mom that maybe I should dress more like my sister, speak more like my sister, be more like my sister. "Good," I'd said, and started typing. At the apartment of building the case. Back in my apartment, I'd sat cross-legged on my couch, laptop open, surrounded by the evidence of Jason's deception. The room was silent except for the gentle hum of my laptop and the occasional car passing on the street below. My walls were covered with my illustrations, the one part of my life where I felt completely in control, where no one could tell me I was doing it wrong. "Okay, Jason," I'd muttered, opening the folder I'd labeled as my personal Pandora's box. "Let's see what kind of story these tell." The first email was from exactly 9 months ago, Jason's desperate plea after I'd threatened legal action. "Baby, please. You know I'm good for it. This new venture is going to be huge. I just need time to secure the right investors. Don't do anything rash. Think about how this would look to your family. Your mom already thinks you're overreacting." He'd known exactly which buttons to push. My family's perception. My fear of being labeled dramatic. The subtle implication that my mother was already on his side. The next email was even better. The $50K was always meant to be an investment, not a loan. You're making this weird by demanding repayment terms. My bitter laugh had echoed in my empty apartment. Funny how it wasn't weird when he was begging for the money, swearing he'd pay me back with interest. Another message notification had popped up. Victoria this time. I'd almost ignored it, but curiosity won out. You're being really childish by ignoring Mom's texts. It was just dinner. Stop making everything about you. Just dinner. The place where my father's oldest friend and business advisor would be present. The place where Jason would have the perfect opportunity to pitch his latest scheme. The place where I, the only person who could warn my father, was deliberately not invited. I'd added Victoria's message to my growing file. Context matters, after all. My phone had rung, startling me. Dad's name lit up the screen. "Hey, sweetheart," he'd said when I answered. His voice had that slight slur that came with expensive wine. "Just wanted to thank you again for the wine recommendation. Really impressed everyone." Everyone including Jason? The words had slipped out before I could stop them. Long pause. "Ah, you saw the photos. Hard to miss them with all over Instagram." "Emily," he'd sighed. "You know how your mother gets about these things. Jason just happened to be in town and..." "Save it, Dad." I'd pulled up another email from Jason, dated just 2 weeks ago. "Quick question. Did he happen to mention a new tech venture, something about revolutionary AI integration?" The silence on the other end had been deafening. "How did you?" "Because I have the same pitch in my inbox from 8 months ago, right after he ghosted me with $50K of my money." I kept my voice steady, professional, like I was presenting to a client rather than confronting my father. "I'm sure he's changed. I'm sure this time it's totally legitimate. Emily, this is business. It's not personal." My father's mantra. The words he'd used to justify every missed recital, every forgotten parent-teacher conference, every time he'd chosen work over family. Except now, when it suited him, family and business were suddenly intertwined. Really? Because excluding your daughter from your birthday dinner while inviting her fraudulent ex feels pretty personal. Another pause. What do you mean fraudulent? I'd smiled despite myself. Check your email in the morning, Dad. I think you'll find some interesting reading material. What are you? Good night, Dad. Happy birthday. I'd hung up and returned to my laptop, opening Jason's investor deck, forwarded to me by a friend in tech months ago. There, under risk assessment, was a single line that made my blood boil. Previous venture faced opposition from disgruntled former partner, personal relationship, no legal merit. That's what I was to him. A footnote, a risk to be dismissed. I recalled my mother's voice from Christmas dinner last year, when I tried to mention the money Jason owed me. Emily, don't be so dramatic. Men like Jason don't need to borrow money from women like you. The casual cruelty, the implication that I wasn't worth stealing from. Victoria had nodded in agreement. You probably misunderstood the arrangement. Dad had changed the subject, asking about the sweet potato casserole. My mother Diane had always been obsessed with social standing. Growing up, our home in Connecticut was immaculate, ready for impromptu visits from her club friends. The furniture was expensive but not flashy, the art conservative but tasteful. Appearances mattered above all else. She came from old money that had mostly disappeared by the time she inherited anything, but she clung to the social connections and expectations like talismans against middle-class ordinariness. She'd married my father Robert for his potential, seeing in the ambitious construction worker the drive that would eventually build Mitchell Construction into a regional powerhouse. Dad had built his company from nothing, without the benefit of college or family connections, and seemed to accept Mom's social climbing as the price of peace. Victoria had learned early that following Mom's script earned praise, while questioning it earned cold shoulders. I was the disappointment, the daughter with art school ambitions and a stubborn refusal to care about the right clothes, the right schools, the right friends. Yet somewhere deep down, I still craved their approval, still felt that stab of pain when I was excluded, still hoped for the day they'd see me, really see me. My phone buzzed again, a text from Jason himself. Heard you talk to Robert. Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. We can work something out. I added his message to the file, then opened my email. The subject line was simple. What you need to know before tomorrow's investment meeting. Into the body I wrote, Dad, I've attached documentation of Jason's pattern of financial manipulation, including bank statements, communication records, and evidence of similar behavior with other investors. I'm not sending this out of spite, but because I can't watch him do to you what he did to me. Love, Emily. My cursor hovered over the send button. This would change everything, not just with Jason, but with my entire family. Mom would be furious. Victoria would never forgive me for ruining her perfect dinner's aftermath. Another Instagram notification popped up. Victoria had posted yet another photo from dinner, captioned, Nothing better than family time with the people who really matter. I clicked send. Immediately my phone lit up with a call from Jason. I declined it, watching as 3 more calls came in rapid succession, then the text I'd read standing at my window. You have no idea what you've just done. But I did. I knew exactly what I'd done. Morning after the first response. Sleep hadn't come easy. I'd tossed and turned, checking my phone every few minutes, wondering if I'd done the right thing or just blown up my family for nothing. By 6 a.m., I gave up and made coffee, watching the sunrise paint my kitchen walls pink while notifications started rolling in. First, a missed call from Mom at 5:47 a.m. No voicemail. Then, Victoria, answer your phone right now. 3 more calls from Jason, all declined. At 7:13, the email I'd been waiting for arrived from Dad. We'll talk. Thank you. 2 words that made my hands shake so hard I nearly dropped my phone. Not the explosion I'd expected, not the dismissal I'd feared, just, we'll talk. Thank you. I'd prepared for anger, for defensiveness, for accusations, not for gratitude. It was so unlike my father to be direct, to acknowledge, to thank. I sat at my kitchen counter, staring at those words, unable to process what they might mean. Sarah called while I was still staring at those words. You doing okay? She asked. Your sister's been posting some pretty intense stuff. I pulled up Instagram. Victoria had shared a series of cryptic stories. Some people will do anything for attention, followed by family means loyalty, and finally, the truth always comes out. She's not wrong about that last one, I said, surprising myself with a laugh. Emily, Sarah hesitated, her voice dropping. Jason's been calling me too, trying to get me to tell him where you live. My blood ran cold. What? Don't worry, I told him to get lost. But maybe stay at my place for a few days? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Dad. I have to take this, I told Sarah. I'll call you back. Dad, I answered, heart pounding. The meeting's in an hour, he said without preamble. His voice was tight, controlled, the voice he used for business emergencies. I've already forwarded everything to Walter. Walter, Dad's friend and business advisor for 20 years. My stomach clenched. What did he say? He said I should thank you. Dad's voice cracked slightly. And that I should have asked more questions when you first mentioned problems with Jason. Dad, I know, let me finish. Your mother. She's been in contact with Jason for months. Did you know that? The betrayal hit like a physical blow. No, she thought she was helping, said you were just bitter about the breakup, that Jason had changed. He took a shaky breath. I should have seen it, should have asked why they were so insistent about that dinner. A text from Jason flashed across my screen. Last chance to fix this. Dad, whatever he's offering you, it's not real. None of it is. I know that now. Papers rustled in the background. The investment meeting is just a formality. I'm not giving him a cent. But, Emily, this is going to get messy. Your mother's already talking about family loyalty, about how you've betrayed everyone's trust. I thought about all the times I'd stayed quiet for the sake of family loyalty, all the times I'd swallowed my truth to keep the peace. How loyalty in my family had always been a one-way street, my loyalty to them, never theirs to me. Then let it get messy, I said. I'm done pretending. Good, Dad said, and the pride in his voice was something I hadn't heard in years. That's my girl. After we hung up, I finally listened to the voicemail Jason had left at 3 a.m. You think you're so clever, don't you? Sending all that private correspondence, breaking confidence. I've got lawyers too, sweetheart, and they're going to tear you apart. You want to play dirty? Let's play. His voice had that strange combination of smooth and menacing, like poison honey. Once, that voice had made me feel special, chosen. Now it just made me feel vaguely nauseated. I forwarded the voicemail to Dad and Walter, then called Sarah back. I'm coming to get you, she said immediately. Pack a bag. You're staying with me. I can't hide from this. It's not hiding, it's being smart. Jason's unhinged, your mom's on the warpath, and your sister's rallying her entire Instagram following against you. Take a breath. Let the dust settle. My phone pinged with a message from Walter. Smart girl. Keep documenting everything. We've got your back. Another Instagram notification. Mom had finally broken her social media silence with a photo from last night's dinner, carefully cropped to show just her and Dad. Family is everything. Blood is thicker than water. Some truths shouldn't be told. I clicked through to the comments. Victoria had already responded. Some people mistake revenge for righteousness. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, tempted to respond with all the truths I'd swallowed over the years. Instead, I took a screenshot and added it to my growing file of documentation. Okay, I told Sarah. I'll pack a bag, but I'm not running away. I'm just regrouping. That's my girl. I'll be there in 20. And Emily? Yeah, I'm proud of you. This took guts. After hanging up, I looked around my apartment at the life I'd built despite Jason's betrayal, despite my family's dismissal. On my bookshelf sat a photo from years ago. Me, Mom, Dad, and Victoria at the beach, all smiling. It felt like looking at strangers. I packed the photo too, a reminder of what I was fighting for. Not the fantasy of what we were, but the truth of what we'd become. My phone buzzed one final time. That again. Meeting starting. Stand strong. At Sarah's apartment, the fallout, I was pacing Sarah's living room when Dad's call finally came. 3 hours had passed since the investment meeting was supposed to start. It's done, he said, sounding exhausted. And it was ugly. What happened? Jason lost it, completely lost it. Started yelling about betrayal, about how you'd violated his privacy. Then Walter pulled up the second investigation. The what? I sank onto Sarah's couch. Turns out we weren't the only ones looking into his business practices. When Walter mentioned it, Jason just snapped, started threatening everyone. Security had to escort him out. My hands were shaking. Dad, I'm so sorry. Don't be. But, Emily. He took a deep breath. Your mother and sister were waiting in the lobby. They'd come to support Jason. The betrayal felt like ice in my veins. Of course they did. It got worse. Your mother. She admitted she's been helping Jason set this up for months. Said she was trying to fix things between you two. That's why they arranged the dinner. Fix things, I laughed bitterly, by ambushing you with an investment pitch from my fraudulent ex. I confronted them both. It didn't go well. My phone buzzed with an incoming text. Victoria, I hope you're happy. You've destroyed everything. Mom's crying, Dad's not speaking to any of us. And Jason's life is ruined all because you couldn't handle being left out one time. Nicole? Dad's voice brought me back. Are you there? Yeah, I'm here. Just got a lovely message from Victoria. She's angry. They both are. Another text came through from Mom this time. This was not your place. Some things should stay in the family. I laughed without humor. Funny how I'm only family when it's convenient. Emily, I'm sorry. I never meant for this to come between you and your mother and sister. I knew things weren't perfect between you all, but I never realized how bad it was. I finished for him. Yes. And I'm partly to blame. I've always taken the path of least resistance with your mother, with Victoria. It was easier that way. There was a rawness to his voice I'd never heard before. But I was so focused on avoiding conflict that I missed what was happening right in front of me. I thought about my father's own background, how he'd grown up with an alcoholic father who berated him constantly, how his mother had withdrawn into herself to escape the chaos, how Dad had sworn he'd never be that kind of father, and in avoiding conflict at all costs, had created his own form of absence. I need some time, Dad said quietly, to think, to process. I've moved into the lake house for a while. Dad, no. Listen, I'm proud of you for speaking up, but I need to figure out how I missed so much, how I let them. He trailed off. Just stay safe, okay? Jason was saying some things. My phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. Speaking of which, I think his lawyers are calling now. Don't answer. Let them leave a message. And Emily, I love you. Those 3 words, so rare from my father, made my eyes sting. After we hung up, I checked my voicemail. A clipped, professional voice. Ms. Mitchell, this is regarding a cease and desist order and pending lawsuit for defamation and intentional interference with business relationships. Please have your lawyer contact our office immediately. Sarah emerged from her kitchen with 2 glasses of wine. That bad? Jason's suing me. Mom and Victoria showed up to support him against Dad, and apparently there's a second investigation I knew nothing about. About that. Sarah pulled out her laptop. Remember my friend who works in tech investment? She just sent me this. She turned the screen to show me a financial news website. The headline made my heart stop. Tech startup under investigation for fraudulent investment practices. Multiple victims coming forward. Holy, I whispered. Your email to your dad? It wasn't just about saving him. You might have helped expose something much bigger. My phone kept buzzing with notifications. Victoria was on a posting spree, stories, posts, comments, all painting me as the villain, Jason as the victim, herself as the loyal sister standing by truth and family. Mom had joined in too. A mother's heart breaks when children choose vengeance over love. They're really going all in on this narrative, aren't they? Sarah said, reading over my shoulder. They always do. It's easier than facing the truth. A new email popped up from Walter. Stay strong. Keep everything they send you. Your father's lawyer will be in touch tomorrow. Don't engage with anyone until then. I closed my social media apps and turned off notifications. The weight of everything, the lawsuit, the family chaos, the second investigation, pressed down on me. Hey, Sarah said softly, handing me the wine. You did the right thing. Then why does it feel so awful? Because doing the right thing sometimes means breaking what was wrong, and that always hurts. I took a long sip of wine, thinking about Jason's threats, Mom's cold dismissal, Victoria's rage, about Dad alone at the lake house, finally seeing the truth. You know what the worst part is, I said. Part of me still wishes they'd just invited me to dinner. Sarah squeezed my hand. I know, but they didn't. And now everyone has to live with the consequences. Days of silence, the media storm. 3 days at Sarah's turned into a week. I worked remotely, designed logos for clients, and watched as Victoria systematically reared our family history on social media. Just look at this, I said, showing Sarah my phone over breakfast. She's posted a throwback photo from 2 years ago, me, her, and Jason at Christmas. Her caption, some people can't handle seeing others happy. Jealousy destroys families. The comments are brutal, Sarah noted, scrolling through the responses. How many followers does she have now? Up 10,000 since this started. She's turning it into content. I laughed hollowly. Mom's helping, of course. Every passive-aggressive quote about forgiveness gets shared to her story. I tried to focus on work, but it was hard to care about font choices and color palettes when my personal life was imploding. My designs grew darker, more angular. A client actually loved the change, said it gave her brand edge and authenticity. If only she knew. My phone rang. Dad's lawyer, Margaret. Good news, she said when I answered. Jason's lawsuit is basically dead in the water. Everything you shared was documented communication, and his threats since then have only strengthened our position. What about the SEC thing? That's bigger than we initially thought. Multiple investors have come forward. Your father's evidence was just the tip of the iceberg. A notification popped up. Victoria had posted again. The truth about my sister's vendetta against Jason. Full story in my next post. They're really committed to this narrative, I told Margaret. That I'm just jealous and vindictive. Let them talk. Every post, every comment, it's all documentation. She paused. Speaking of which, your father wanted me to tell you he's filing for divorce. The words hit like a physical blow. What? The dinner was apparently the last straw. Finding out your mother orchestrated it all hid Jason's true intentions. He's done. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence until Sarah brought me coffee. You okay? My parents are getting divorced because of me. No, Sarah said firmly, setting the mug down with a decisive thud. Because your mom chose Jason over her own family, because she's been lying and manipulating everyone. I remembered my parents' marriage, how it had always seemed more like a business arrangement than a love match. Mom got the social standing she craved. Dad got a beautiful, socially connected wife who knew which forks to use at fancy dinners. They rarely argued, but they rarely touched either. As a child, I'd wondered if that was normal. Now I wondered if Dad had been waiting for an excuse to leave for years. My phone buzzed. Victoria's promised expos had dropped, a carefully curated carousel of photos and screenshots painting me as unstable, jealous, vindictive. The final slide was a screenshot of a text I'd supposedly sent Jason. I'll destroy you if it's the last thing I do. That's fake, I said, staring at the doctored message. She's actually creating fake evidence. Screenshot it, Sarah advised. Send it to Margaret. Before I could, another notification appeared, a message from someone I hadn't heard from in months. Lisa, Jason's ex-business partner. I saw what's happening, she wrote. I have proof he did the same thing to me. Would you like it? My hands shook as I replied, yes. Minute later, my inbox filled with documents, bank statements, contracts, emails, the same pattern, the same promises, the same threats when she tried to expose him. I forwarded everything to Margaret, then opened Instagram. Victoria had posted again. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. My sister showed us her true colors. The irony was almost funny. I remembered Lisa from a tech conference 2 years ago, a brilliant coder with a quiet confidence that made Jason seem loud and insubstantial by comparison. He'd introduced her as his technical co-founder, then proceeded to talk over her for the entire presentation. Later, she disappeared from the company website, and when I'd asked about her, Jason had muttered something about creative differences. Now I understood what those differences likely were. My phone rang. Dad, you saw? I asked. I saw. Your mother's defending her, saying Victoria's just protecting family. He sounded tired, but there was something else in his voice, a clarity I wasn't used to hearing. I'm selling the house, Emily. I can't stay there, not after everything. The lake house feels more like home now, anyway. Yeah. He paused. How are you holding up? Oh, just watching my sister turn me into a social media villain while mom cheers her on. Living the dream. Emily. His voice softened. Come visit me this weekend. Just us. No drama, no phones. We can fish off the dock like when you were little. The invitation, so simple, so genuine, made my throat tight. I'd like that. After we hung up, I checked my email one last time. A message from Walter. Sec wants to talk to you formally. Your evidence combined with Lisa's. This is becoming a major case. Sarah read over my shoulder. Still think you should have just stayed quiet? I thought about Mom and Victoria, so desperate to maintain their perfect narrative that they'd destroy anyone who threatened it. About Jason, whose house of cards was finally falling, about Dad finding peace in his solitude. You know what's funny? I said. They thought excluding me from dinner was the punishment, but it was the wake-up call I needed. My phone lit up with another notification. Someone had tagged me in a comment on Victoria's post. Where's your sister's side of the story? Why are we only hearing your version? I watched as more comments appeared questioning the narrative, asking for proof. The tide was turning, slowly but surely. Truth, I said, putting my phone down. Doesn't need an Instagram filter. Sarah smiled. Now that should be your next post. No, I said, thinking of the lake house, of fishing with Dad. I think I'm done performing for their audience. At the lake house reconnection. The lake house looked exactly as I remembered. Weathered blue shutters, creaky screen door, and the old wooden dock stretching into calm waters. It had been our summer retreat when Victoria and I were children, before Mom decided it was too rustic and started preferring Hampton's rentals with proper central air and proximity to her friends. Dad was waiting on the porch with 2 cups of coffee when I pulled up. You remember the fishing gear? He asked as I climbed the steps. In the trunk, along with those disgusting cheese crackers you love. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Up close, I could see how tired he looked, how much older than just a few weeks ago. The lines around his mouth seemed deeper, his shoulders slightly stooped, as if the weight of recent events had physically pressed him down. We need to talk, he said, handing me a coffee, about everything I missed. We settled into the ancient Adirondack chairs facing the lake. The morning sun painted everything gold, almost like nothing had changed. A loon called somewhere across the water, its melancholy cry echoing across the stillness. When did it start? He asked. With Jason, I mean. The money? I took a sip of coffee. Or the manipulation? Both. I told him everything, how Jason had slowly isolated me from friends, how he convinced me his financial troubles were temporary, how the loan had started as 5,000 somehow became 50,000. I told him about the increasing demands, the diminishing excuses, the moment I realized I'd been conned. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I tried, Dad. Remember that dinner last Christmas when I mentioned Jason owing me money? Mom said I was being dramatic. Victoria said I was just bitter about the breakup. You. I hesitated. I changed the subject. He finished quietly. Like I always did. A fish jumped in the lake, breaking the surface with a quiet splash. I let them steamroll you, he continued. For years. It was easier than dealing with your mother's intensity, with Victoria's drama. He set his coffee down. I failed you. Dad, no. Let me finish. When I saw those emails you sent, saw the evidence of what he'd done, I realized I hadn't just failed to protect you, I'd helped them hurt you. The words hung between us, honest and painful. I looked out at the lake, remembering how Dad had taught me to fish right off this dock when I was 7. How patient he'd been, showing me how to bait the hook, how to cast without tangling the line, how to gently unhook a fish we planned to release. That patience, that gentleness had been real. But so had his absences, his silences, his refusal to intervene when Mom and Victoria pushed me aside. You know what's weird? I said. If they had just invited me to that dinner, none of this would have happened. Jason would have gotten his investment, Mom would have gotten her perfect family facade, and I would have kept quiet like always. And I would have lost everything, Dad added. The investment, yes, but more than that, my chance to finally see the truth. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably another notification from Victoria's ongoing social media campaign. I ignored it. You know, I've been thinking a lot about my father lately, Dad said unexpectedly. About the kind of man he was, the kind of father I swore I'd never be. I knew little about my grandfather beyond the basics, that he'd been an alcoholic, that he died before I was born. Dad rarely spoke of him. He was a mean drunk, my dad. Would come home from the factory, crack open a beer, and by dinner he'd be looking for something to criticize, someone to tear down. Usually me, sometimes my mom. Dad's voice was quiet, matter of fact. I swore I'd never make my family feel that way, afraid, worthless, walking on eggshells. And I didn't. But I went too far the other way, didn't I? I avoided conflict so completely that I let other kinds of harm happen right under my nose. I didn't know what to say, so I reached over and took his hand. His skin felt like paper, the veins prominent, a lifetime of construction work etched into every callus. I'm not making excuses, he continued. Just trying to understand how I got here. How I let your mother run roughshod over you for years. How I convinced myself it was better to keep the peace than to stand up for what was right. He squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, Emily. Truly sorry. You're doing it now, I said. Standing up. Too little, too late. No, I said, thinking of all the alternate versions of this story. The one where I stayed quiet. The one where I gave into their narrative. The one where nothing ever changed. I think it's right on time. My phone buzzed again. This time Dad pulled his out too. Ah, he said. Your mother's lawyers finally filed the divorce response. How bad? She wants the house, half my business interests. And he laughed without humor. She's claiming emotional distress from how I turned our daughter against the family. That's rich coming from someone who invited my fraudulent ex to your birthday dinner. Speaking of Jason, Dad pulled up an email on his phone. Walter sent this morning. The second investigation is going public next week. Multiple charges of investment fraud, wire fraud, securities violations. They're calling it a Ponzi scheme. Have you told Mom? She's not speaking to me, but Victoria. He showed me her latest Instagram story, a photo of her hugging Jason, caption reading, "Standing by good people in bad times. The truth will prevail." The truth already is prevailing, I said. Just not their version of it. Dad stood up suddenly. Let's go fishing. All this. He waved at our phones. It can wait. I want to hear about your life. The real stuff, not the drama. Your work, your dreams, everything I missed while I was playing peacekeeper. We spent the next few hours on the dock, fishing poles in hand, talking about everything and nothing. Dad told me about his plans to retire completely, to make the lake house his permanent home. I told him about my graphic design business, about the children's book I'd been secretly illustrating. You know what I remember? He said as the sun climbed higher. You used to sit out here for hours drawing the birds. Your mother said you were wasting time, that you should focus on practical things like Victoria did. I should have defended you then. You're defending me now. We fell into a comfortable silence, the kind I'd never experienced with my mother or sister, where words weren't needed to fill every space. Just the gentle rhythm of casting and reeling, the occasional splash of a fish, the call of birds overhead. I'm thinking of turning the boathouse into a studio, Dad said after a while. For painting, woodworking, or maybe for a certain graphic designer who might want to work by the lake sometimes. The suggestion, so casually offered, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I'd like that. My phone buzzed again. A message from Margaret. Jason's lawyers want to discuss a settlement. They know what's coming with the SEC. How do you want to proceed? I showed Dad the message. Your call, he said. But whatever you decide, I'm with you this time, all the way. I looked out at the lake, at the future stretching out before us, messy and real and true. Tell them no deal, I said. Some things are worth more than money. Dad squeezed my shoulder. That's my girl. Breaking news, the dam breaks. The SEC announcement hit like a tsunami. I watched from Sarah's couch as Jason's face appeared on every local news channel, the words, a multi-million-dollar investment fraud, scrolling beneath his perfectly composed expression. Turn it up, Sarah said, bringing in fresh coffee. Serial entrepreneur Jason Mitchell faces multiple federal charges in what investigators are calling an elaborate Ponzi scheme targeting private investors, the anchor announced. Sources say the investigation was accelerated by evidence provided by former associates. My phone exploded with notifications. Victoria had gone silent on Instagram for the first time in weeks. Mom, however, had not. Family stands together in crisis, her post read. The media doesn't know the whole story, but I do. Unbelievable, I muttered, opening my email to find a message from Lisa. They're interviewing me tomorrow. Good luck. I typed back. How are you holding up? Better than Jason. Did you see he's been dropped by his lawyers? Before I could respond, Dad called. You watching the news? He asked. Yeah. How's the fallout? Your mother's hysterical. Keeps saying we've ruined her standing in the community. Victoria. He paused. Victoria what? My heart quickened. Victoria finally knows the truth. What do you mean? Walter showed her the complete file, everything, including emails between Jason and your mother from months ago planning how to get me to invest. Turns out your mother reconnected with him right after your breakup. She's been grooming this situation for a while. The betrayal felt fresh all over again. Why? Money? Status? She thought having Jason in the family, successful, connected Jason, would give her the social standing she's always wanted. She never believed your warnings because she didn't want to. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Jason, I hope you're happy. You've destroyed everything I built. I forwarded it to Margaret without responding. Emily? Dad's voice brought me back. There's something else. Victoria's here. What? At the lake house? She wants to talk to you. My heart pounded. Put her on. A moment of rustling, then my sister's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it. Hey, hey, I replied, unsure what else to say. She took a shaky breath. I was wrong about everything. Mom showed me selected parts of messages, told me Jason was the victim. I believed her because it was easier than admitting what we did to you. Victoria. No. Let me finish. I was horrible. The dinner, the social media campaign, all of it. I chose the pretty lie over my own sister, and now. She choked up. Now Mom's still defending him even with all the evidence. She's lost in her own reality, and I finally see it. I close my eyes, feeling tears threaten. It's not just about the dinner. I know. It's years of us dismissing you, excluding you, making you feel crazy for telling the truth. I'm so sorry, Emily. I know it's not enough, but I'm sorry. I remembered Victoria as a little girl, before the competition, before Mom's influence had fully taken hold. How we used to hide under the dock at the lake house, telling each other secrets. How she'd once stood up to a bully who made fun of my drawings. Somewhere beneath the Instagram filters and Mom's expectations, that sister might still exist. Can we talk in person? Victoria asked hesitantly. Maybe at that coffee shop you like? I thought about all the times I'd extended olive branches, all the times I'd been hurt. But I also thought about Dad finally standing up for me, about truth finally breaking through. Okay, I said. Tomorrow morning. Thank you, she whispered. After we hung up, Sarah looked at me questioningly. You sure about this? No, I admitted. But I'm not doing it for her, or for mom, or even for family harmony. I'm doing it because I want to know who my sister is when she's not playing a role in mom's perfect family fantasy. My phone buzzed one final time. A message from Margaret. Jason's taking a plea deal. Your testimony won't be needed. It's over. But it wasn't over. Not really. It was just beginning, the messy, honest work of rebuilding relationships on truth instead of pretense, of learning who we all were without the masks we'd worn for so long. Hey, Sarah said softly. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud of you. I looked at the news coverage, at Jason's mugshot, at mom's desperate social media post, at Victoria's silence, at the whole tangled web of lies finally exposed to sunlight. You know what's funny? I said. They thought uninviting me to dinner would put me in my place. Instead, it gave me the courage to finally find my voice. Sarah raised her coffee cup. To uninvited daughters who refused to stay quiet, I clinked my cup against hers. To truth in all its messy glory. At the coffee shop, sisterhood rekindled. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Maple Coffee House as I waited for Victoria. My phone buzzed with news alerts. Jason Mitchell pleads guilty in tech investment scheme, claims multiple victims. The bell above the door chimed. Victoria walked in without her usual perfect makeup and Instagram-ready outfit. She looked younger somehow, more like the sister I remembered from childhood. I ordered your usual, I said as she sat down. Oat milk latte, extra shot. You remembered, she said, wrapping her hands around the mug as if seeking its warmth. Her hands were trembling slightly, her manicure chipped, something the Victoria I knew would never have allowed. I just came from mom's, she said after a moment. She's still in denial, convinced Jason was framed, that you manipulated everyone. How did that go over? Victoria stared into her coffee. She wanted me to help her start a fundraiser for his legal fees. And I said no. For the first time in my life, I told her no. She looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. The thing is, Emily, her voice cracked, watching her spiral, seeing how she twists reality to fit her narrative. It made me realize I was becoming just like her. The social media campaigns, the fake screenshots, the constant performance of perfection. It's exhausting, isn't it? I agreed softly. God, yes. She pulled out her phone, showing me her Instagram profile. I deleted everything, all the posts about you, about Jason, about our perfect family. It felt freeing. My own phone lit up with a text from Dad. Moving trucks at the house today. Your mother's leaving. I showed it to Victoria. Good, she said firmly. Something had hardened in her face, a resolve I'd never seen before. Maybe without her influence, we can, she hesitated. We can try to be real sisters again. If you want. The barista brought our pastries, chocolate croissants, another childhood favorite we used to share before diets and image consciousness came between us. It won't be easy, I said. There's a lot of hurt. I know. But I'm willing to do the work. Real work. Not just pretty Instagram apologies. My phone buzzed again. Walter this time. Settlement papers ready for review. Jason's assets frozen. You'll get your money back. The funny thing is, I said, putting my phone down, the money doesn't even matter anymore. What matters is that the truth finally came out. Truth? Victoria repeated thoughtfully. Remember when we were kids and we'd hide under the dock at the lake house? Just us, telling secrets. Before Mom decided secrets were better kept buried. Before I learned to perform instead of live, Victoria broke the croissant in half, offering me a piece like we used to do. Dad invited me to stay at the lake house for a while. Said he's turning the old boathouse into an art studio for his retirement. For him. For you, she said. He said it's time you had space to create without judgment. Something warm bloomed in my chest. Really? He's trying. We both are. Victoria pulled an envelope from her bag. Inside was a stack of papers, printouts of every false social media post she'd made about me, every manipulated screenshot, every lie. I'm going to post a public retraction, she said. The whole truth about Jason, about Mom, about how we treated you. No filters, no performance. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Not for likes or followers or mom's approval. For us. My phone lit up with a message from mom. I hope you're satisfied with the family you've destroyed. Victoria saw it too. She'll never change, will she? Probably not. But we can. As we sat in that sunlit cafe, I realized something fundamental had shifted. The complicated, messy dynamics that had defined our relationship for decades were changing. We weren't the little girls under the dock anymore, but we weren't the estranged adult sisters of last week either. We were something new, something still forming, tentative, fragile, but real. To change, Victoria raised her coffee cup. Into second chances. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Victoria had years of conditioning to overcome, and I had years of hurt to process. Mom would likely never admit her role in any of this. But in that moment, with chocolate on our fingers and sunlight warming our faces, I felt a glimmer of something I hadn't felt in a long time when it came to my family: hope. Epilogue: no filters needed. Later that evening, as I packed boxes for my temporary move to the lake house, Sarah helped me sort through old photos. Look at this, she said, holding up a picture from the dock. Two little girls with gap-toothed smiles holding up a fish nearly as big as they were. Before the performance, I said. Before the perfect family facade. And now, I showed her Victoria's latest post, a simple, unfiltered photo of our coffee cups and broken croissant, captioned only, "Starting over." Starting real. The truth about my sister. Think it'll last? Sarah asked. I thought about Dad's art studio, about Victoria's deleted posts, about Mom's crumbling fantasy world, about truth finally breaking free. I think, I said, packing the old doc photo carefully, we're finally ready to write our own story. No filters needed. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from the shock of discovering I'd been excluded from Dad's birthday dinner to the complex web of revelations that followed. How one small act of exclusion had snowballed into something that completely transformed my family. If they had just invited me to that dinner, none of this would have happened. Jason would have pitched his fraudulent investment, Dad might have invested, Mom would have maintained her perfect family illusion, Victoria would have continued performing for her Instagram audience, and I would have kept swallowing my truth to keep the peace. Instead, their exclusion had forced me to see what I'd been avoiding: that I deserved better, that truth mattered more than pretense, that real connections couldn't be built on lies. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in honest colors, not perfect but beautiful in their chaos, just like truth, just like family, just like healing. I picked up my phone and texted Victoria. Dad's making his famous terrible chili at the lake house tomorrow. Want to help me tell him how awful it is? Her response came quickly. Only if we can hide under the dock after. I have more truth to tell. This time, when I smiled, it reached all the way to my heart. As I closed the last box, I caught my reflection in the mirror, shoulders back, head high, eyes clear. I looked different somehow, as if I'd shed a skin I'd been wearing for too long. The uninvited daughter had found her voice. And it turned out that voice was worth hearing after all.